Yo, what's good? What's happening, Rush Nation? Welcome to episode 87. Happy episode 87 of 5 Yard College, I should say. Happy Friday to everybody who's nearly made it to the end of March. Ash, we've waited all week to get into a soft spot for you, the offensive line. How has your week been, my man? Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. It's been good. It's been a long week of work, but it's been good, and it's Friday now, so no complaints. How about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, long week. Worked extra today, which is good. Sun's out, so can't complain. 16 degrees it was. Madness.
Yeah, it's
Shorts
nice
weather.
day.
It's
Yeah, getting there, isn't
definitely
it?
shorts weather. But, you've got a funky, for those who are going to be watching on the video show, Ash is wearing quite a funky t-shirt. What you got on there, pal?
It's a Hobo Jack t-shirt. It's one of
Ooh,
my main brands that I like to wear.
there's Ash.
So yeah,
It's I got a main brand Hobo
yeah,
Jack. If it's
you
not
know,
Hobo Jack, I'm not keen.
if it's not a Hobo Jack, it's 5 yard. That's all. That's all I wear. But I mean, yeah, it's comfy.
It looks like a good fit, actually.
Yeah, it is.
A nice, and this is one of the reasons, Rush Nation, why you have to watch the video show, because you get snippets like this, which are terrible audio. So for the OGs listening, apologies. But if you aren't a fan of the video or just haven't come over to watch this, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe and the notification bell, give it a little ding-a-ling, and then every time Ash and I, not just us, all the 5 Yard crews go live, you will get to see their faces, not just in audio, but also video. And then when you see the little 5 Yard College headline, you know, it's Ash and me coming at you in, I would say high definition, but it's whatever you're watching in, right? I mean, Ash and I were conversing just before the show, I guess, when sort of 5 o'clock, Ash, you messaged me about Michigan's David Ajobo and his pro day injury. That wasn't too long ago, was it?
No, literally broke this afternoon. He unfortunately has gone down injured during the pass coverage drills at the pro day. He had to be helped from the field, and apparently it's a left leg injury. Now they haven't said what type of injury. Is it knee, ankle? We don't know what it is at the moment. It's obviously early doors, but the fact he had to be helped off is quite concerning for Ajobo.
Yeah, especially as he was one of the guys who was, as you rightly said, a developmental prospect, but he's got
Yeah.
huge upside, but he's going to need some molding in the NFL. And for this to happen before the draft, when we considered him perhaps a first round pick,
Mm.
what's that going to do to his draft stock now? We'll have to wait and see to what the actual leg injury is itself, but it's not going to be good news.
No, not at all. Like I say, it could have an impact on his draft stock if it is a bad one. And on the flip side, if it's not, it shouldn't have too much of an impact. But as you say, he is a developmental player. He does have incredibly good potential, and he has got the raw talent. He's shown that at Michigan, and at times he's looked better than his counterpart Hutchinson. But it all depends on the severity of this injury and to how long he's going to be out for. Really, it's a big blow for him.
Yeah, there'll be some people out there screaming at you right now, Ash, saying he was never better than Hutchinson. Hutchinson's the best player in the draft class, but I think there's a player in the draft class who deserves to be number one overall. When we're going to speak about him very shortly, we've got one more bit of news. It is relating to the offensive line, Ash. I don't know whether you just put O-line news in today, or was that all that there was?
These are the sort of main talking points really that's come up over the last week. Apart from draft stuff, it's all a bit quiet at the moment in the college world. Unsurprisingly, we're in the off season technically. It's just the pro days and the build up to the draft now. So
Yeah. Well, I'm before we do get to the next bit of news, I'm quite enjoying the laid back nature of sort of just watching a bit of tape, you know, sort of chilling back, hands behind head, whereas the NFL boys are going absolutely bananas with free agency. I know
yeah,
even
definitely.
you, Ash, have been fairly involved this year with your Steelers making some FA moves that perhaps they wouldn't normally do. But people aren't here for the NFL. They don't
No.
come for that chat. Free agency is all over the other parts of the 5 Yard network. So if you want to get involved with that, head over to there. But yeah, it's been pretty chill getting a bit of tape watching and stuff. But as I mentioned, OSU's offensive lineman, Harry Miller, has announced his retirement from football. Miller cited mental health issues that pushed him to the brink of taking his own life. So it's good that he didn't go that far, Ash. And it's also good that he's realised that stepping away from football was perhaps the right thing for him to do.
Yeah, definitely. And he credited Ryan Day for helping him out and giving him the support he needed, as well as the Ohio State organization. And he's made decision that's going to benefit him in the long term, and that's always the right decision to make. Speak to people and try and get it under control. And if football was going to be an impact on that, he's decided to walk away from it. And right, good on him. As you say, he's actually acknowledged that was the reason. It's not often, especially with men, that they acknowledge mental health issues. So just to him to shine a light on that is a positive in itself, and the fact that he's seeking help and has taken this step is a massive positive for him.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. We spoke last week, Ash, about you playing the offensive and defensive line, and we're going to get a little bit more into that today because I have a couple more questions based on your playing experience, because I think it's a good place for not only me, but for other people who have never played, perhaps for them to get a bit of an insight into what, obviously you're not quite good enough to make the NFL, otherwise you would be there right now, but you have an insight into playing the position and perhaps what you think makes a good offensive lineman, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as well on the defensive side of the ball when you said you really enjoyed playing defensive end because you got to really knuckle down and get into the quarterback and never snaffle up two people at once because you weren't really the run stopper. But with the offensive line, Ash, where did you play along the offensive line, and did you only have one position?
No, I played across all three positions. Well, five if you're being picky, but I played a bit of tackle, bit of guard, bit of centre. I predominantly played in guard though, and sort of between there and centre for the majority of the time. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Centre was brilliant. Obviously, it's the line and then a little bit more because obviously you're snapping the ball and then you're having to get yourself set and ready. It is you've got to be incredibly switched on all the time on the line as a whole, but definitely from the center position, because as soon as you snap that ball, you have got to get up and get yourself set and ready to engage like instantly.
And it's not the sort of thing whereas if it's a running play or a passing play, if you're a wide receiver, you get to take perhaps that snap off. If it's going to the other side of the field, you were involved on every single play, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You are involved every single snap of every single play on the offensive side of it. You never get a break. If you think that you've had a break, you have done something wrong. Whether that's your stance, your get off, your engagement with the defensive player, or your finish. Obviously, we see it in the NFL. We see it at college. We see it on tape where linemen, they don't. I wouldn't say they give up, but they don't finish the play. They don't finish the drive. They release the player maybe a little bit too early, and the defensive play comes off because of that. And as I say, you've got to be switched on every snap, every second that the play is live. And even before, from a center, you're calling the defensive plays. You're calling who the Mike linebacker is, the one who's calling the defensive plays. So not only are you focused on snapping the ball to your center, to your quarterback, and getting ready to get up and engage, but you're also most of the time the centers are the ones that are calling the, like I say, the Mike linebacker, the person who's calling the plays on the defensive side, any changes or audibles that they make. So,
and is that also in picking out potential blitzers who might not be showing so and stuff like that?
Yeah, so you have to identify the blitz and call out their number. There's a whole. Sometimes it is the guards and even the tackles that call it out, but most of the time and every time that I played for the team that I played for, it was always the center's responsibility to call out those blitzers and the as I say the Mike linebacker. So there's a whole heap of there's everything going on.
It's something that I think is very underrated when watching the game from a spectator's point of view, because it is, you only ever hear about the good and the bad. If somebody stands somebody up, or if somebody puts somebody down, or if somebody lets somebody go and they get a sack. I mean, it's not that black and white, and I'm very aware of that. But the average line play that keeps stuff on time and moving is very much forgotten about when spectating, especially for the casual fan. And I think from what I've learned from you and doing a bit of tape watch and stuff, and I know we're now getting into the podcast and we haven't even touched on the first player yet, but once we get to the players, it will be mostly you talking. So I'm getting some talking done now. It helps. It builds a bigger picture of each play if you understand a little bit what's going on, or you realise that he blocked him in a way that meant and a hole opened up or didn't, and stuff like that. And I don't think it's explained enough on TV for the casual
No,
fan to get so much of an understanding.
I'd agree with you there. Yeah, if you're not invested in the offensive line, you may not fully understand it or pay too much attention to it. You're completely spot on there, and it's the same with the media when on game days, whether that's college or the NFL, because it's not a sexy position, it's not a skill position, so people don't pay a great deal of attention to it unless something goes wrong. If a
Yeah,
lineman's made a mistake, a defender has made a play, and then it's all in lights then, and then that's when the linemen get the attention when the
yeah.
mistakes are made.
And then you get the occasional blow up play. I'm trying to think who did it last year. A lineman sort of pushed 3 or 4 defenders forward on a
Yeah,
run play, and everyone blew up like this is the best line play you see all season. But these guys are doing it play in, play out without not any recognition, because that's not quite correct. But they don't get the adulation that the skill position players get. And
no,
you know,
exactly. Well,
we see it on the defensive line as well. If you're not an edge, you don't necessarily get the
no,
kudos you should probably get for creating havoc elsewhere. Or
no, you don't get credit for stuff in the gap ever, and you don't get credit for making the gap. If a 90% of the time, if a running back makes a play, in particular through the line, through the defense, it's because the gap's been made by the lineman. They've done their job in the run play. That's to move the defenders out the way, to create those spaces, to create those gaps, to pin the defenders in, to allow the running back to make that play. They don't get credit for that a lot of the time because the running back is the one who's made the play. And don't get me wrong, running backs do make plays out of nothing a lot of the time. We spoke about it last week on the running back show, but yeah, they don't get a great deal of play. And same with the quarterback. If a quarterback is given enough time, if the pocket's clean and the line have kept that pocket clean, and the quarterback makes a play from that,
mm,
it's the quarterback 9 times out of 10 that gets the credit.
yeah, and you've only got to go back and look at the Super Bowl, where if Joe Burrow had one more second, he would have found an open Jamar Chase, and the Bengals would have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's based on the line. But there wasn't enough of a deal. There was plenty of news about how Joe Burrow was on the floor more times than he should have been last season, and the fact they got to the Super Bowl was outstanding. But there needs to be more emphasis on the guys protecting the quarterback, and as you rightly say, making those gaps for the running back. Because when Dalvin Cook goes blasting up through for a 65-yard run, it's never the guys making the gap that get any of the credit, really.
No.
Okay, let's dive into the 2022 draft class. Uh, are we talking all tackles, or are there some guards today, Ash?
No, it's all of the line tackles, guards, centers. I've mixed them all in, and there's a few of these guys that are potentially going to be either or both. So they're all mixed in. I believe they are in order of our rankings.
Okay.
There might be a couple of discrepancies, but I'm pretty sure they're all in order of our rankings at the moment. I think
Sweet. So
a place or two.
full disclosure for not only you, Ash, and Rush Nation who are listening, my offensive line knowledge is, well, apart from what's in front of me, Ash has kindly provided on the show doc. I'm not really an offensive or defensive. I am predominantly a wide receiver man. And when we come to the wide receiver show, hopefully I shine a little bit there. So I'm going to be leading Ash into the offensive line, and then we can all sit back, listen to Ash's love for the position. We're going to start with Evan Neal, tackle
Yeah.
from Alabama, 6'7", 350 pounds, so a little bit smaller than me. Probably needs to add a couple of pounds. Again, a video joke if you listen to the audio. Apologies. Evan Neal. Initially, it was Thibodeau and Hutchinson that possibly were going to go number 1 overall. Evan Neal has now made himself. I think he's pretty much a lock now to go number 1 to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
In regards to offensive line and tackles, Ash, is he as good as the guys we saw last year, or where does he sit for you amongst the last classes?
I would say so. Yes, I think he would have been if he'd have come out last year. I think he would have been in that conversation for the first lineman to go, along with Sewell. I think put if I had to put money on it now, I'd say Sewell would have probably still gone ahead. I think his overall potential is probably more than Neil, but Neil's close, and for me, he's the clear number one tackle and the number one lineman if as a whole in this draft class. Um, there are very few things wrong with his game, and what I have seen and what a lot of people have seen is nitpicking because he plays the position so well that you are looking for the errors that he makes, and the ones that I pick out, bar one, are errors he's made on plays on occasion. It's not a fundamental issue in his game, but they are there, so they have to be picked out. But strength wise, first, I think the most glaring thing about Neil is his size. He's 6'7", 350 pounds. He's the perfect size frame for the tackle position. He's got the length, he's got the arm length, he's got the overall length, he's got the size, the frame, the mass, and that then moves into his strength. He is an incredibly powerful player that uses that strength to his advantage. He moves around defensive players, sometimes with relative ease, and drives them back. Like, as I say, sometimes when it doesn't even look like they're there, that they're moving so freely with Neil pushing them around. I think that's the biggest thing for him is just how powerful he is and how strong he is against almost everybody he comes up against. But on top of that, he adds explosive athleticism. Now he's not he's quick, but he's not the quickest because, of course, he's 6'7", he's 350 pounds. But what he has is explosive power off the snap in the engagements that he gets out of his stance. He engages early. He catches defenders off guard and off balance. That's key on both sides of the ball a lot of the time for defensive and offensive line is catching the person in front of you off balance. If you get someone off balance, it doesn't matter how strong they are. If you get them off balance and you can start driving them, it's very, very hard for them to recover from that. By the point, if they do recover from it, the play's already gone on either side. Neil is one of those players that is incredible at that. He gets off quick. He's strong enough to move the defender off balance, and then he can just do with them what he wants. He's also able to move his body to counter those more agile speed rushers, as we call them, to swing, who are trying to swing around the edge. He's quick enough to react, to turn his body, to continue to make that block against those type of players. And then on top of that, he has got the hands to back it up. He's got the hand technique. For those of you that don't know, is obviously, well, I'm sure everyone knows because you see it all the time with holding penalties. You can't obviously hold on to a player, but you use your hands. You jab into him with your palms, and you almost leverage your hands underneath his pads if you can get there to again maneuver a player. His hands are always moving. They're always active. They're strong, and he, as I say, he's quick. He gets his hands engaged early to dictate how the engagement with his defender's going to go.
Is that what they call finishing on the line? When you get somebody off balance and you're able to drive them away from or along the lane that you've created, that's classed as finishing the play, right?
Yeah, that or put them into the ground.
Put them on
the ground, pancake them, drive them back onto the ground, finishing the play, which it will come up a few times. Obviously, the thing with linemen, whether it's tackles, guards, centers, barring center that's got a couple of additionals, their job is the same: is to protect the quarterback or it's to make the spaces. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about tonight is going to be repetitive for the players, but they're all very different players. But you categorize offensive linemen on a number of things. So, but yeah, finishing plays is a massive thing for offensive linemen, and you see it even in the NFL where linemen, as I said earlier, where they don't finish the play, they don't put the player into the ground, or they disengage a little bit too early. When that happens, there is still a chance for a play to be made on the defensive side.
Yeah, I've got a good idea, Ash, for next year. We need to come up with a scale for said players. So when it comes to, finishing or athleticism, because we don't want people to be put off by repetition, we could say this guy is an 8 out of 10 for his hand placement. So when it comes to talking about, for instance, Nikem Akunu, who we're going to get onto next, he might not be quite as good in a couple of sections as Evan Neal is, and that's why we have him above.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and that is something that you do see from a lot of analysts and a lot of NFL teams will definitely have some sort of metric that they have in place to evaluate their linemen. I think that's a great idea. Adding some grades and some stats behind the information, definitely.
I think it might give a bit of audio substance for those listening as well, just so that they can say, well, that's why he's second, because he's only a 7 at this, or I don't know.
Yeah. I think, definitely, it's a great idea. I think before we get on to Akunu, as you say, he is next. I mentioned it earlier. There are errors with everybody on this tape. There are things that they can do better. I think with Neal, his game is pretty solid. He's one of the more well-rounded of these, and just his metrics, his physical metrics are incredibly impressive. But a few things, I think defenders can get under his pads sometimes because of how big he is. His stance is a good stance. He is low to the ground as possible, but he is a bigger guy. He's a tall guy. So there are times if a defender gets a jump off quicker than him, they can get under their pads. And as I say, doesn't matter how big and how strong you are. If you're off balance, if someone's underneath you and has got a grip on your pads in the legal way, sometimes not if it's not caught, but we try and get away with that as much as possible. I'm not going to deny that you're always grabbing, but on both sides, it's a matter of the game. So if you get caught, it's a problem. But yeah, people can get him if they're quicker, if they reacted quicker, if they've got hold of his pads, that they can maneuver him out of the way or just move him, collapse the pocket. You don't just have to make a play by getting to the quarterback. If it's a passing play and an edge or a defensive tackle is pushing your offensive line into the pocket where the quarterback's going to be, they're doing their job then as well. They're disrupting that play, and the quarterback's going to have to make a play from that, and it makes life difficult for them. So that's something that I've noticed at times on his tape. And the other thing as well is he is quick, but he does struggle against speed rushers at times. He doesn't always react quick enough to those speed rushers and struggles to make up for it if they have beaten him, purely again because of his size. As I said, he can turn and his lateral movement can be impressive, but sometimes they can just sort of get a bit too quick and then they're gone. And I think the only other thing as well is he relies on his strength sometimes too much, because he'll stop and he'll just look to overpower the player, the defender that he's engaging with, rather than continuing to drive them back. He'll just sort of just keep them there. And if a defensive lineman or an edge or a linebacker, whoever it is that's trying to make the play, they can use their defensive moves, the swing, they can use those moves and get away from him. And if he's obviously stationary, it's going to be a bit more difficult for him to react. But you mentioned it earlier. I think he's certainly a lock for top 3, and I have him going number 1 overall now. I'd be very surprised if the Jags didn't take him number 1 overall. I think realistically the only way that can happen now is if someone else comes in at the number 1 spot, and even then, someone could easily trade up for this guy because he could well be a starting left tackle Pro Bowler for a decade.
And that's worth its weight in gold, as we've seen in recent years. And you've got here, weight, Ash, has been a problem for him in the past. He has hit as high as 390 pounds, which is it's a huge amount of weight. Obviously 6'7", it's not quite as obvious as it would be on a 5-foot guy, but this is something he's probably going to have to manage in the pros. You've got written down here is because when you get that big, perhaps you can slow down a little bit. But I'm sure with NFL nutrition and weight and conditioning and stuff, he should be able to manage that.
Yeah, it was earlier on in his career, but he has fluctuated his weight in extremes, £40 from it is a lot, and he didn't put £40 on in one go. He didn't go 350 to 390. It was gradual, but we saw an increase in his weight, and then it dropped back down, and it happened a couple of times. So yeah, it's just something that he will need to be mindful of, because he's going to want to be in that 350 range to be as effective as he can with the way that he plays.
Sweet. Let's move on to number 2. Nikem Akunu, as we mentioned, he is guard/tackle from North Carolina State, 6'4", 310 pounds, so lightweight compared to Neil. He is a junior. Do we think he's going to play guard or tackle at the next level, Ash?
I do think he'll settle into guard. I put guard tackle because he played there at college. He's tested there. He can go into tackle if needed, but I think his main area is as a guard. That is where I see him long term.
Okay, let's start with strengths as we always do. What's Akunu good at?
I think first off, he's an incredibly smart player, incredibly smart person. He had offers from Yale and Harvard when he was going into college. Obviously, he decided on NC State, but he's got incredible football IQ because of that. He knows every play on the offensive side, which you need to as an offensive line anyway, but he knows them inside and out, but he can also read defensive plays incredibly well. And this is one of those players where I was talking about at the start of the show about centers and linemen calling the defensive plays, calling the blitzer and the Mike linebacker. He is incredible at that because he's got that football IQ. That's one of them. I think the main thing for me for Akunu, that what makes his game so great, is he is a mauler in the run game. He is hyper aggressive. He's violent when he engages with the players, and he's also straight up into the second level to look for that contact if it hasn't engaged in the trenches on run plays. It often happens. A guard's responsibility on certain run plays is to disengage from the defensive lineman and then engage at the next level with the linebacker to create that space for the running back. He finishes every single play with the same aggressive nature that he starts to play and that he's at the start of the game. He's got an incredible motor. He runs non-stop when he's in the run game. He's just got a motor that doesn't quit, and that aggressive nature that he's got is there from start to finish.
So what makes the difference between a mauler in the run game as opposed to somebody who's good on the offensive line in the passing game?
A mauler is sort of it's what it says.
You're almost after a bulldozer in that case, right?
Yeah.
Just to push the play out of the way and
yes, but they do it differently. They not only push the person out of the way, but they're aggressive, they're violent with it. They put them in the ground, they forcibly move them, or sometimes two players sometimes, because you can get double teamed or with defensive linemen, and on the flip side you can double team defensive linemen as offensive linemen, depends on the play. But just a mauler's just got that added extra, just the grit between their teeth, and you can see them forcibly moving someone and almost like they're about to engage in a fight. They just ground and pounds, as we say on the running back. When we say about running backs, they're ground and pound running backs. Linemen do that same thing. They push and they pull and they just overpower players and maul them. Basically,
I'm visualizing a grizzly bear with
pretty
teeth
much,
showing and drool everywhere. And okay, cool. So why do we have him at 2? What sort of weaknesses he got that perhaps he needs to work on, and is evident that is something to progress with?
There isn't. I mean, there isn't a great deal. I think the main areas that I picked out for him is that aggressive nature can sometimes get the better of him, especially when it comes to pass protection. Whereas you do need to be a little bit more reserved. Akunu can step up a little bit too far with his explosive burst and allow those defenders to come on the inside on the pass protection. So he's just got to rein it back in a bit. Whereas on the run game, you can be aggressive because you're trying to make those gaps. On a pass protection, you're trying to keep that pocket clean. You're trying to keep that space and move players and keep players out of there. But if he engages too aggressively and steps up too early, a defensive lineman, an edge is gonna make that play on the inside and sometimes on the outside and get past him.
I guess the key for me in that statement was when it comes to run blocking or pass protection,
Mhm.
I think you have to be less aggression in your protection. But
Yeah,
for me, it comes across that way. You need to be protective and less aggressive. But when
yeah,
you're blocking, rough or running, there's still aggression needed in pass
of
protection,
course,
obviously,
yeah,
because you've got
different type of
somebody
aggression.
exactly, and it's the protection
Yeah.
that he maybe needs to work on.
No, definitely. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, and I think just his passing game overall. His pass protection game overall. It did improve greatly in 2021, but it is the techniques are something that he's going to have to work on at the next level to sort of get up with that elite run blocking ability that he has.
This is my naivety from the trenches coming through here, Ash. Do players get pulled in and out dependent on the play being called if they are specifically good at pass blocking or pass protection or run blocking?
Not,
Or is it just a case of you're not as good at that as the other thing?
I think it more at the NFL level from what I see. I think it's more that it's just something that there isn't as strong for them. They work on it a little bit more in training, but they are typically a run blocking offensive line rather than a pass protection. I think you see it a little bit more at college. Obviously, bigger rosters,
Yeah.
there's more rotation, and we're definitely seeing it at the amateur level. When I played, we did have players that were much better at pass protection than they were at run blocking, so that we would sometimes switch it, but predominantly you're better at one, and you train and you try and improve the other to be good enough at the other to
Stay in.
to stay in. Basically, yeah, it's very rare that you see an offensive lineman come in or out, mainly on specific plays that happens.
Sure thing. So draft prediction, Ash. Where have we got Aquino going?
I would say top 10 easy for me. I'd be very, very shocked to see him drop out of the top 10. He's, as I say, he's a guard for me at the next level, and he's a guard that can step in and start straight away.
Okay, move on. Number 3, somebody who's been getting a bit of traction recently is Charles Cross, tackle from Mississippi State, 6'5", 310 pounds, and is a sophomore. So he's coming out relatively early, right?
He is, yeah, and that is a good thing because obviously he is young and he's got a lot more time to develop at the next game. And I'll go straight into one of the weaknesses because it is a weakness, but I'm not too concerned about it. He is only a 2-year starter. 2020 was a good year for him, but it wasn't great. 2021 was a great year for Cross. This is how he's got onto the map and he's shown his true potential, but he is still relatively inexperienced, and what we've seen as a sample size. I'm not overly concerned because what I have seen is brilliant from him. I think in particular pass protection. I think he's one of the best. I think he's one of, if not the best, pass protector in this draft. He's got all of the technique for that role that you want down to a T. He's got elite hand placement. He rarely gets flagged for personal fouls because of holding. He recovers well when he's beaten, and when he's initially beaten. I mentioned about Neil earlier. If he does get beaten by those quicker linebackers or edges, that he struggles to react. I think is the opposite with Cross. He is instant with his reaction, and he keeps the blocks alive as well. He keeps those plays alive for his quarterback. He'll keep the defender out of the pocket for as long as possible, or if not the whole play.
What I'm hearing is, Ash, is the Giants should draft Charles Cross and Nikem Akunu in the first round with their early picks. I don't know whether you did that on purpose, Ash, but when you were talking about Charles Cross getting on the map, there's always an X marks the spot on a map. Cross, very well done. If you didn't mean it, I picked it up, but I enjoyed it if you did.
I'm going to say I did mean it. Let's move on. No, I think just a couple more strengths from him is he's explosive. He's explosive off of the snap. He's quick. He reacts instantly from the snap. As I say, a lot of the time, regardless of what side you're on in the trenches, it comes down to that moment when the ball is snapped. It's who reacts first. Cross is incredibly reactive to that and explosive to that. He's also very quick with his feet, which allows him to keep moving with the edge rushers, whether that's pushing them around the outside of the pocket, or, as I say, pushing them back. And he's rarely out leveraged. And what I mean by that is essentially he's rarely taken off balance when it comes to pass protection, and protects the pocket incredibly well. As I say, I think he's the best pass protecting lineman in this draft class.
Good. Weaknesses. We've got him at number 3. There must be something to put in here.
Yes, there are a couple of things. I mentioned it. He's obviously relatively inexperienced. The other issue I do see is he is quite lean for the position. He's got lean frame. I think he could do with adding more mass to his frame. I mean, he was 270 pounds 2 years ago, but one thing that I do notice is I think he can add more, but I don't think there's a great deal of room there for it to be added, if that makes sense. I think he's almost at his maximum mass, should we call it. But I think if he can, that is something I would like to see, because he is relatively lean, which then carries over to the fact that he's not the strongest. I think he has got good strength, and he's shown it at times that he can overpower linemen and rushers, but he's not got great strength, and he doesn't physically overpower defenders. He uses the technique of the pass protection and in the run game as well. Run game is another one, and I don't think it's him. Because I haven't seen it. He played for Mississippi State. They run an air raid offense. He was involved with the most pass play snaps in college last year, with 3,000. Sorry, in his career with like over 3,000 something. But he's only ever been involved in under 400 snaps in run play.
Wow.
In run play. So very inexperienced, very limited work in run blocking, because Mississippi State didn't call for that. So it's a weakness, because it's an unknown. We don't really know how Cross is going to perform consistently in the run block.
Yeah, interesting. We mentioned this on the running backs issue, where Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall had so many touches, and whether or not that was a negative on the NFL level after how many touches. And Rich piped up in, that's probably a bad way of saying it. Rich came into the group chat and said, actually, great listen, boys, was a little nugget of information. The players with more touches actually are less injury prone in the NFL than. So I wonder if this, although this probably comes down to technique and practice and game time snaps, that we just, is it a weakness? Yes, because we haven't seen him do it. But is it a weakness that can be corrected? If he does it for 400 snaps in the NFL and is better, then yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Ash, draft projection. You've got him first round. Whereabouts?
Yeah, I have got him first round, and I would say he's top 15. I think after Ekwonu and after Neal, I think he's the next guy up for me. I think he's the second best tackle. Again, he's another guy that can go in and start straight away. He can start left or right. If he lands in the right area, he can be transitioned over to the right tackle, or he can stay where he's played predominantly at left tackle. But yeah, easily top 15 for me. I think I'd be very surprised if he goes lower than that.
Sounds like he'd do himself a job in the NFL, that's for sure. At number 4, we have our first centre, Tyler Lindebon. Iowa, 6'2", 296 pounds, is a junior. What makes him the best centre this year, Ash?
Yeah, clear best centre as well, and the only centre that we'll be talking about tonight. There are a few others, but they're mid-round picks, so they won't be raised tonight. I think Lindebon is the clear number 1 centre in this draft class, and for me, he is very quick out of his stance and with his footwork. I mentioned it earlier, as a centre, not only have you got to concentrate on snapping the ball, but calling the defensive plays, but you've also got to snap that ball and react straight away. And he's quick at that, and he's got incredible mobility to move when the players are live along the line and in the open field and make those run block plays and maneuver within the trenches to keep the pocket alive. And a lot of that comes down to how quick he can react out of his stance and get into position, lock himself in, whether he needs to go pass or run block. He's also got all of the blocking techniques down. He understands the blocks very well. He positions himself well, as I mentioned earlier. He uses angles. He uses the angles and leveraging to his advantage to make up for what you said at what you mentioned, his size and his weight earlier. He uses the techniques of blocking and the angles and leveraging players to make up for his size.
Would you not consider that then him to have a good football IQ based on the leverage, because he understands what the defender is going to do and can use his leverage knowledge to create a good play for him on the offensive line, thus meaning he has good IQ on the football side of things?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely does. You need to know how to leverage a player, where you put your hands, what you do with your feet with a kick step, and how you move within and around the pocket. And that does come down to football IQ as much as it does come down to obviously training. But you need to know how to do it and how to read how a defender's going to react as well.
Absolutely. I feel like we need, Ash, the podcast where we break down all of these things that are talked about.
I know.
Like you said, kick step. People might not know. I have no idea what a kick step is, and this is not me. This isn't a slight on you because you've done it and I haven't. But I wonder if there is a thirst out there, and there is a real. I can't drop any sort of spoiler alert on this, but there is something coming, which I think, Ash, you and I, as a Q&A, will be perfect for what's coming up. So that's all I'm going to say, and you don't even know what I'm talking about. I'll tell you
not
after.
at all.
But Rush Nation, there's something coming in the pipeline, which I think Ash and I can break down perhaps some jargon and lingo from the game that not only you'll learn from, I'll learn from as well, Ash. So I think that could be well worth us having a go at. But then I'm gonna nick your last point, Ash. You've got elite pass protector here because he's only allowed 2 sacks in 3 years.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know what's more impressive: Sauce Gardner not allowing a touchdown, considering he's not involved in every play, or Tyler Lindebon only allowing 2 sacks in 3 years when he's snapping the ball every single time.
Yeah, exactly, and in the Big Ten as well, which have known to have incredible defenses. So yeah, it says a lot about him without watching him, just of how good he is at that pass protection role, with just how few sacks he's given up.
Absolutely. Weaknesses. Why is he not the best player, considering how important a centre is?
The first thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is his size. He is a smaller player for not only the centre but the offensive line. He's got average strength. He doesn't physically impose defenders, like the same as I mentioned about Charles Cross earlier. It's even more so for Lindebon because he's 6'2", because he's 296 pounds. Just he hasn't got that size that you typically want to see from a centre and from an offensive lineman. You've got to add that in there. As I said earlier, I think he's smart enough and he knows the game and the techniques well enough to overcome that. At least he did at college. Can he do that at NFL with these elite defenders and these NFL defenders that are going to be in front of him? I think yes, but we do have to see that to obviously know for sure. He does play high, and what I mean by that is when you're in your stance, when you need to be as low to the ground as possible so the defenders cannot get underneath you, as I mentioned earlier, and then move you around. He does play high, which allows rushers and defensive linemen to get under his pads and move him about. And I'm going to come back to it a lot because it's one of the key things when it comes to offensive linemen. If you get someone on their pads underneath them, because if you obviously, I'm sure a lot of you know how and what the football pads look like, but if you get them underneath on the chest plate in particular, or just under the shoulders, you don't have to hold them, you can use your palms, and you've got as much control as you want then to just move the player around. And he plays high.
If you're not watching the video, you've just missed a classic moment of Ash using his hands to almost be a robot in moving the pads around. And I guess that when you watch the videos of linemen practicing, especially against the dummies when they're in a rack and they put and they explode up and their hands always go up, I'm assuming that's getting into. I did it as well. So if you're not watching on the video, you're really missing out here. Okay. Anything else weakness-wise before we get to draft projection?
Yeah, so again, similar to Akunu earlier, he sort of plays at 100% every single snap, which means he can rush out a bit too soon in the run blocking game in particular, and sort of overrun plays. And of course, when you do that, defenders past you, and they're going to blow up the running game, the run play instantly. So he just needs to rein it back in slightly, so he's in the right area to make the right engagement and not overshoot the mark.
And as a draft projection, Ash, you've got him here as a first-round talent, and it says he may fall to the second due to centre value.
Yeah.
Why, when it's such an integral piece of the offensive line, are centres so undervalued?
I don't know. I can't explain it, but they just are. They just seem to be, and I just don't get it because they're so few and far between. Because it is a specialized position. Not everyone can snap a ball. It is harder than you think to be able to snap a ball.
You just got to take one down the park and try and throw it backwards between your legs.
Exactly.
It's almost impossible.
I just don't. So I don't get it. But in recent history, at least anyway, the center value in the draft does seem to go a bit. Yeah, it does seem to be a bit undervalued. So he is 100% a first round talent. He's the clear best center in this draft class, and I would say he was the best center if he'd have come out last year in that draft class as well. But I just think he's going to be in the second round because of the fact that he is a center.
Gotcha. Let's move on to number 5. We've got Kenyan Green, guard from Texas A&M. 6'4", 320 pounds, and is a junior.
Yeah. Versatile.
Kenyan Green, versatility. There we go.
That is the big plus for Kenyan Green, in my opinion. One of the big plus. He has played every position on the line.
No, this does not count.
It does count. It counts. If he's taken a snap at center, he's played center. He's played at every position on the line. But no, so he has played left guard, right guard, left tackle, right tackle. And the fact that they had confidence in a game to allow him, to take one singular snap while the starting center was out. He knows that position. He can do it. He won't play center at the next level. However, we've seen it before. A starting center and his backup could go out and get injured in a game. And it's not often that a roster has more than 2 out-and-out centers. So he has got that there if they need it to play in center. He's got that versatility. He can line up wherever you want him to. Now, he hasn't got the size that you would love to see for a tackle, but at Texas A&M, he's shown that he can play that. I think he did a year at tackle, and he's done a couple of years at guard, but again, in all 4 of those positions. So his versatility is a massive plus for any team that's looking at him. He's also incredibly disciplined when it comes to pass protection. He doesn't shoot out the defenders or overextend himself to be out of position. He plays low to the ground, which doesn't allow the rushers to get under his pads and to make those plays to get around them. And he's got the good size and frame for a guard that you want to see. And on top of that, he's got incredible athleticism to add it up. He moves like a rusher at times with the way that he bursts out and that he's moving up and down the field. And he's got the strength to add to that. I think the only issue that I have is just how poor he showed out in the combine. I think if you purely looked at his combine stats, it is really disappointing. He only did 20 bench press. I don't think his 40 time was that good. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like 5.68 or something like that. But yeah, he really didn't show out in the combine, which I was very surprised to see, because from tape, I think he's one of the most athletic linemen in the 2022 class, but we just didn't see it for whatever reason. Maybe he was carrying a knock. Maybe he just didn't want to push himself too hard. I don't know.
Well,
So I rushed through
hopefully.
that, but I'm just
No.
I'm conscious of time already. We've done 5 and we're 50 minutes in.
Yeah, we're going to go long today, Rush Nation. It's I suppose it's bread and butter for us now, Ash, and our podcast is almost a treat if you manage to.
Yeah.
We can keep going and see what happens. With maybe, like you say, it was a bad day, and hopefully people are, the NFL scout doesn't just turn up at the combine and watch him and say, well, that was terrible. You can't possibly, there is tape out there, and I'm assuming that his tape is good enough to perhaps possibly make up for his misgivings at the combine, shall we say. Any weaknesses that he needs to work on?
Yeah, much like Akunu earlier, he's an elite run blocker, but he needs to continue to develop his pass protection. It's improved this year in particular, 2021, but he does still need to work on his technique, like continuing to move when he's engaged with a player. He does stand his ground rather than continuing to try and move the player around. I think that just those techniques in the pass protection, need to be worked on. And as well, I think although he played, I mentioned it at the start, I think although he played tackle at college and they'll like his versatility, I do think long term we'll see him as a guard because he doesn't have the arm length that you want from a tackle.
We're definitely going to need a podcast on some things because I've no idea why you need a long arm at tackle. I'm guessing it's something to do with leverage, Ash. Yeah. You've got Kenyan Green going in the first round, top half.
Yeah, I would say so. Again, I think I would be very surprised to see him go below mid-20s early 20s because of the fact of the talent that he's shown out, the fact he's versatile, and everybody needs an O-lineman. And I mentioned it about centres earlier, but I think showing what happened to Burrows last year maybe is going to add some value that we haven't seen from linemen before. But
or it will depreciate linemen because you can get to the Super Bowl when you don't have any line. So
maybe, yeah.
Although the Bengals have just gone out and made a huge signing in free agency to try and protect Joe Burrow. Zion Johnson is up next, guard from Boston College. He is 6'3", 310, and a senior, Ash. Strength for Zion Johnson.
Yeah, big-bodied, athletic. He blends the size that he is for a guard with the movement and the speed of an edge rusher, which he played edge rush along with guard at Boston College in 2019. He played both sides of the ball.
Oh my goodness me!
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen the snap percentages of what he played edge, but he did play edge for them in 2019 as well. So he has got that athletic capability on top of his size for the guard position, definitely. And his lower body mechanics are right up there with everybody. It allows him to be flexible as well as being sound in his base. He's strong lower body, and how flexible he is just allows him to maneuver around and get to those areas that you don't normally see bigger linemen get to. He's also got great hands. He connects with the defenders and keeps his hands on them at pretty much all times, both hands engaged, but legally, as far as we can see, at least anyway. And he's also quick, as I mentioned earlier. He's quick with his movement and precise with his movement. He doesn't take unnecessary steps, and he's quick to get into the position that he needs to be, whether that's in the run game or the pass protection. And he again plays low to the ground and he anchors himself. By anchoring himself, I mean put your foot behind you and stop someone pushing your back, basically.
I figured as much.
Yeah.
When we talk about weaknesses for Zion Johnson, why have we got him where we have?
Because he is, I think the main thing is his pass protection. It does need work, much like oh, my mind's gone blank. We spoke about him earlier. Much like Cross with the limited work in the run game.
Ash is gone, everybody.
See, I have. My mind's gone. Yeah, much like Cross in the run game, Johnson has not had as much experience. Well, has not had as much experience in the pass protection, and it's one of the things that he needs to work on. Again, he looks to plant himself down rather than continuing to move, and he can get caught out on his leverage because of that. Because he's standing still, trying to overpower someone rather than trying to move them back and continue moving his legs himself. And he does struggle to read plays. He can sometimes look lost. So there's you're given a particular assignment from every offensive player as an offensive lineman. You've got a designated person that you're going to need to engage with most of the time, whether that's a double team or a single, or if you're pushing up into the open field for a run play. There are times where he seems to he loses his assignment, or he forgets who his assignment is, and he's then just looking for someone to block, and by that point the play's dead. And that is mainly because he is still relatively young, and he is also one of the more inexperienced linemen, because he was a 0-star recruit that joined the FCS, and he had no offers from FBS schools. And he was at Boston College for 2 years, I think. Eventually he got shown. I think he played for Davidson in the FCS. He balled out there and got an offer from Boston College, and he's been there for 2 years. But that lack of experience at top level, at top tier competition, and at top tier programs is a negative on him, because he still is trying to develop his game.
Gotcha. He is our first second round prospect, Ash.
Yes. Yeah. Second round for me. I think he shows everything that you want to see from a guard, but as I say, he needs to work on his pass protection, and he is inexperienced, so he just needs to develop overall. But the talent is certainly there for a second round pick for me.
Well, that's fair. Him being lost is a slight concern for me. I'm not sure that's ever something I want from my NFL.
Yeah, and it's not often, but it's often enough that I noticed it. That lost is a strong word. He just seems, as I say, he is almost like he's looking for someone to block rather than already knowing where he should be blocking. You need to make that decision in a split second, whether it's on the designated play and you're given a particular assignment, or if it's on a play where you just need to get out and block someone. Just seems to sometimes needs to take that extra second to decide where he's going.
Okay. Let's move on to somebody I've heard of, and that's Trevor Penning, tackle from Northern Iowa, 6'7", 325 pounds as a junior. Ash's first strength is that Penning is a big boy.
Yeah, he's a big boy along the same sort of lines as Evan Neal, slightly smaller on the size and on the. But I think you look at him, you wouldn't say he's that much smaller in terms of his frame than Evan Neal, and he has all the measurements and all the metrics that you want from a tackle. 6'7", 320 plus pounds. But he's also got athleticism and the arm length, which I mentioned earlier, to back that up, to be a starting NFL tackle from day one. He's also quick on his step off when it comes to stepping out on the snap or stepping back into the pocket. That allows him to move into position and set himself against oncoming rushers before they've even reacted. He's there. He's ready to engage, because you don't in pass protection. You're ready to engage, but you're not going to always be looking for the defender. You're waiting for them almost to engage, because you're trying to keep that pocket whole. Run games, you are looking to engage with a player to push them back, obviously, and it's the opposite in pass protection. So he's there, he's quick to react off the snap and to get himself positioned and to get himself ready for the engagement. And he finishes opponents off. He's a big guy. He dominates people and he puts them in the ground. He pancake them, or he'll push them backwards onto the floor and just grounds and pounds them, basically.
Because you can't do anything if you're on the floor, right?
Exactly.
There is from the list we've read out so far, Ash, it seems that most players are better at one thing or another. Is that a sort of standard 4 players who play guard and tackle?
Yeah, I would say so. You're always going to have those players, and they are the players that end up being elite tackles and elite guards at the next level because they are brilliant at both. But they're so demanding both pass protection and run blocking to learn and understand the differences between them, the different techniques, the different plays, that a lot of players do end up being a lot better at one than the other. It's just it's always going to happen. It's like trying to go and take on 2 jobs that are completely different at the same time and work both of those jobs and know them at the same time. It's very rare to find someone that can do that. And when you do, they're the players that are top tier players that make it.
Gotcha. Weaknesses for Trevor Penning.
Yeah, I think balance is the glaring issue for me. Understandably, yeah, it's understandable at times because of his size. Like I said about Neil, they're taller guys, so they're gonna get caught out on the engagement because of just how tall they are. You can get as low to the ground as you want, but if you're 6'7", you might have 2 or 3 inches on someone, and that it can be a massive factor. So balance is one thing that I've noticed because he gets out leveraged and they've engaged with him so low, and he is obviously playing higher because he is a bigger player that he can get caught off balance, and that is one thing that has stood out for me. But again, as I said at the start of the show, it is a glaring issue because it's come up in his tape enough times to be seen, but it's not consistently happening. So it's a weakness but I don't think it's ever something that he's going to be able to fully get over. I think he's going to be able to improve his technique enough to counter it more often than not, but it will still be there because of how big he is.
Yeah, and it might from your next point as well. It sounds like you've got here that he comes up immediately. The snap can play high, so maybe that's just how he plays that position, and it's so ingrained into his.
Definitely, yeah. Because what you want to do is when the snap's taken, obviously you're essentially sat back in a you're doing a squat every single time almost when you're ready, when you're getting set for a play. What he's doing and what you are taught to do is to basically power out into a defender. And what he's doing that, but because obviously he's taller, he's coming up quickly and obviously trying to engage. But because he's coming up so quickly and he's already quite tall, it just allows them to get underneath him, which is then what causes him to go off balance. And that then a player can get inside, they can spin. You don't see many rushers spin move. That is something that is a ridiculously hard thing to get used to, which is why you don't see it very often. But the rusher can then do all of their techniques, which we'll get onto in the when we do the lineman, and it just allows them to beat him because of that.
Okay. Anything else from a weakness side for our boy Trevor?
Yeah, lack of top level competition. We mentioned it about Johnson. His was slightly different because eventually he went to an FBS school. However, Trevor Penning has spent his whole college career at Northern Iowa, who are in the FCS. So he's not been tested against those top tier defenders. So that is always a concern when it comes to any player that is taking the next step up. Some of them are good enough, and I do think Trevor Penning, he has shown his potential and his talent that will far outweigh the fact that he hasn't played against top level competition. But it does have to be something that we need to be mindful of.
Those North Dakota State players are really bugged right now, Ash. Okay,
I love them.
You've got him as a second round prospect as well.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think he might even be pushing into first round now. I'm seeing him being spoken about in first round as well, and that wouldn't surprise me. But I think if I had to put money on it, I see him second round.
Okay. Maybe a bit overhyped on the Trevor Penning hype train. Finally, rounding out our list today is Bernhard Rahman.
Yeah.
guard tackle from Central Michigan. Go Chippewas, 6'6", 305 pounds, and is a senior.
He is indeed. And I think the first thing for him is he is incredibly agile. He's incredibly athletic for a lineman. And that will be because the fact that he played wide receiver and tight end before he became a lineman. But we'll get onto that a bit more later on. He is very athletic. He's very agile. He's always moving. His feet are always moving, and he keeps his hands busy and quick at all times. He's constantly moving around, and he's constantly engaging and pushing out at the defenders. And he uses his weight and to stay balanced and in control, because yes, he is undersized. I'll get onto weakness now because it does correlate. He's undersized for a tackle, and I think that's why I put guard tackle, because I think he'll move into guard at the next level. But he's able to move himself around to keep himself balanced and in control. He's also able to knock rushes off their line and disrupt the defensive plays, just because of, again, how quick and how quick he can react to a play and react to engaging with a player. And he's got the power behind him to drive defenders back and move them around. The smaller players like linebackers and the smaller edge rushers and linemen, but he has shown that he can do it against defensive tackles as well. And the last strength, which should probably be obvious considering I said he played wide receiver and tight end, but his reactions. He reacts well to the snap. He fires out his stats. His movement is fluid, including his lateral movements, but that will come down to his previous experience playing tight end and wide receiver. And it is really apparent that he did that because of just how quick he reacts to the snap of the ball.
So you've got that down as a weakness, though, Ash. Tell me about this skill position playing for.
Yeah, I've got it down as a weakness because out of everyone we've spoken about tonight, Rahman is the most inexperienced and raw. And that's despite the fact that he is one of the older rookies. He's 25 already by the time that he gets into the NFL, because he's from Austria originally. He's relatively new to football. He went back to Austria. He went into the military for 6 months before returning to Central Michigan in 2018. He started out he played at high school, and I think he did 1 semester or 1 year at college as a wide receiver, went to Austria, come back, then played tight end before he then moved to left tackle for 2 years. He's only had 18 starts as a tackle, and I think he only had 16 starts as a wide receiver and a tight end. So he's incredibly raw and inexperienced when it comes to a lot of the players around him. But it just makes how well he has already developed even more impressive, because you wouldn't really know that if you watched him in a normal play, in a normal game. It's only if you dig into his tape that you can see some of those fundamental techniques and expectations that you have from linemen are sometimes not there. But as I say, I think just his overall potential and his overall talent that he's shown is why he is in conversation tonight, and why I've got him and why we've got him ranked where we do.
Just before you get to the next point, I would like to speak to Mr. Ryman's family, if you're listening. He's the kind of guy who could be designated a receiver from the line on a trick play. So get your money on your boy scoring a touchdown in his NFL career, because I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone's going to do it, if Ryman's playing, it's going to be him.
Yes.
Definitely. A weakness in one of the main ones for me is his lateral movement. I mentioned it earlier that his movement is fluid, but his lateral movement does need work. He can be beaten by the speed rushes on the outside, just with the way that he is almost positioning his body and how he's moving to get into position. Just gets beaten a lot on the outside. And as I said earlier, he's undersized for a tackle, which he's only played. I've not seen him play guards. I've not watched every single minute of his college career, but I've only ever seen him line up at tackle, and he just isn't a tackle for me at the next level. If he'll need to add more weight, full stop, if he wants to be a starting guard at the very least, but he just doesn't have the metrics to play tackle for me, and the overall power to play tackle for me.
Well, that's
So
fair. As long as he bulks up a bit, his
yeah,
skill set will slide him in for a guard quite
yeah,
nicely. So,
definitely. And as I said earlier, he's on this list because of what he's already shown. He is a good offensive lineman with the skills to already play in the NFL. I would like to see a year as a backup before he becomes a full-time starter, but he's already I think he could quite easily step onto an NFL field on day one and play, but I just think he needs a bit more time to develop to iron out some of those things that you expect to see from an inexperienced player.
well, that makes sense. And you've got him down as a second and third round draft pick.
Yeah, I think it's more likely third round, but someone might see the raw potential there, and the fact that they can mold him to how they want, and potentially take a swing at him in the second round.
That makes sense. That's gonna wrap up today's list, Rush Nation. Ash, there are obviously many more linemen that we could have talked about today.
I will give listeners and viewers an insight. At one point, I had 15 names on here, and I was conscious that we would go over an hour with 8, and I am absolutely bang on. So we could have been here for 2 or 3 hours quite easily.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. If there is a big response to this, Rush Nation, if you do want us to do a lineman part 2, because as we stated at the start of the show, Ash, the line doesn't get enough love.
No,
Rush
not
Nation,
at
if you
all.
wanna get involved with the offensive line love, I have no qualms in doing another one because A, this has been one of my most enjoyable shows because I have learned so much. B, Ash clearly has a passion for this position and you can hear it when he talks about it. And C, there's just more linemen we should be talking about.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's 3 points to listen to another show. So if there is an outpouring of love for the offensive line, let us know. At 5 Yard College, it's the Twitter, or if you want to let the bigger brothers over at 5 Yard Rush know, it's at 5 Yard Rush. Either of them or 5 Yard Dynasty. If you're a Dynasty listener and you're listening because they don't cover the offensive line in enough detail, you got the deets right here. Hit them up, let them know. They'll speak to us and we'll do more offensive line. Ash, what do you reckon, my friend?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I would be more than happy to do more offensive line. There's a 6'9" guy that I loved last year that didn't declare that we haven't even spoken about. So I could easily talk for 2 or 3 hours.
Ash,
Daniel
I am.
Falele, for anyone that don't know who I'm talking about.
Oh, you left the cliffhanger. I thought you were going to hang that out for
No.
next week. Listen, we do have a schedule in place, Rush Nation. So if there is love for the more offensive line talk, it would be a bonus pod. Ash and I are more than happy to do that for you because it's that time of the year where we just love to get together and talk about football. Ash, as I mentioned, this has been one of my favorite shows because I've hugely enjoyed listening to your passion for the offensive line. So thank you ever so much, my friend.
No, I've really enjoyed it. It's been great fun tonight, as it always is. But yeah, it's that little bit extra for me tonight. I've really enjoyed it, and it'll probably be the same again in a few weeks when we talk about the defensive line.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it already. Rush Nation, if you are interested in player profiles, head over to the website because we've got them dropping thick and fast now. There's plenty of other fancy content if you're involved in that as well. Ash and I will be back at some point next week. But from Ash, my favourite guardsman, Saturdays are for Rushing 2.